Ubisoft has crossed the line. In their seemingly never-ending downfall, they have chose to blame you, me, Steam, and everybody else for bashing their games and putting them in financial risk. Never mind the fact that their games on average are premium-priced, microtransaction-infested slop with inflated playtime to push player spending, all the while delivering a gaming experience that's akin to tasteless gruel. No. It couldn't be that. No, it's you. It's your fault. It's the campaigns against their games and their public statements. They're calling us an organized group now. I thought we were just customers. I have never seen a company that has been so committed to putting their own foot in their mouth that they then proceed to swallow their entire leg. I am so happy to watch this company fail because it sends a crystal clear message to the rest of this industry. Did you know that you love microtransactions and you think they're fun? Ubisoft says so. With the world at bated breath, waiting for Ubisoft's response to its catastrophic downfall and its constant controversies, they've come forward with their annual financial report, and their investors hammered them with questions they never saw coming. And their CEO fumbled badly. They start blaming everybody else, disregarding and misrepresenting the needs of players. They start scrambling for excuses when their investors start asking about Assassin's Creed Shadows as well as Star Wars Outlaws. And would you believe it? Games journalists are still defending them. But before that, a word from today's sponsor, Displate. Displate makes high-quality metal posters that mount magnetically. No tools, no frames, and no wall damage. I've been using these guys for over 5 years now, and I cannot recommend them enough. They've been great through every single move, swap, and everything else. They have over 1 million designs, games, anime, movies, fantasy art. Whatever you're into, it's probably on the site. And when I finally get to have a permanent studio set up, I'm planning on dedicating an entire wall to just Displate. Some of my favorite anime and games, and maybe I'll even splurge a little bit and get a full texture set or something like that. It is the easiest way that I have found to give a space a bit of personality without trashing the walls. They're super easy to mount, switch out, and they actually look good on camera. At least I think so myself. So if you're looking to decorate or just want a space that doesn't look like a blank white box, check them out. Go to displate.com or follow the link in the description below and use my code LEGENDARY at checkout to get the best deal. Thank you to Displate for sponsoring this video. You would think that after years of collapsing sales, franchise fatigue, and nearly universal backlash, Ubisoft might stop and ask, is there something that we're doing wrong? Is there something that we should learn from this? But instead of reflecting, they've doubled down. In their latest financial report, Ubisoft doesn't describe player frustration as feedback, it calls it bashing. And now, according to them, public criticism isn't just unwelcome, it's a risk factor for the business. Directly from their financial report, it reads, Ubisoft is exposed to risks of damage to its reputation resulting from online bashing, understood as massive, sometimes virulent and organized campaigns of criticism against its products, teams, and public statements. These campaigns may occur on social media, content distribution platforms, or in certain specialized media, particularly following strategic decisions, technical issues affecting games, or statements perceived as controversial by certain segments of the public. The changing perception of the video game industry as a cultural and artistic medium is also leading to an increase in criticism based on ideological or societal considerations, sometimes to the detriment of technical or gameplay aspects. This trend increases the risk of publishers such as Ubisoft of being exposed to controversy relating to social, moral, or identity standards associated with their productions. Man, Ubisoft immediately shows their hand. According to them, the problem isn't the state of their games, it's you, it's the community, it's the backlash, the people that are pointing out what's broken. In their minds, you're not offering feedback, you're mounting an organized campaign, you're not frustrated by years of recycled open worlds and corporate ideology infecting every creative decision. No, you're just part of a virulent trend. Then they go as far to say that societal criticism is distracting from technical or gameplay aspects, as if those two things are not directly connected to each other, as if games don't suffer when they're built around shallow politics, performative casting, and tone-deaf writing instead of just cohesive gameplay and coherent worlds. This is what happens when a publisher is more concerned with optics than outcomes. They stop listening, they stop reflecting, and they start categorizing criticism itself as a threat to be neutralized. This is not a studio that's taking responsibility. This is a studio that is pathologizing dissent. These guys work for the CDC now. It's a desperate attempt to frame public frustration as some kind of unfair attack because, well, the alternative would be admitting that maybe, just maybe, people might actually have a point. But hey, at least they're identifying the problem, right? At least they see that something is broken, that people are pointing something out. That is a step in the right direction, or at least it would be until you read how they plan to mitigate this risk. In order to prevent and limit these risks, Ubisoft has implemented internal reputation monitoring, crisis management, and content moderation systems, has adapted its communication strategy to reflect this new context, and its legal and human resources departments have developed appropriate processes to respond to these attacks on its reputation. Also, calls on external partners to support in its monitoring and crisis management strategy. So just to be clear, Ubisoft's solution to being criticized for making bad games is to surveil and suppress. Not to fix the games, not to listen, not to examine the very clear reasons why people are upset. No, their answer is reputation monitoring, crisis management protocols, and content moderation systems. Basically PR fire suppression. They didn't build new pipelines for player feedback. They're building systems to be able to deflect it. They're not improving their output. They're building defenses against people pointing out the rot. They even roped in legal and HR because now apparently criticism is a workplace threat, because if somebody says this game sucks a little bit too loud online, Ubisoft wants a team of lawyers and crisis handlers ready to classify it as reputational damage. That's how fragile these people have become. And just to tie it all off, they include external partners. Ubisoft is almost certainly referring to platform holders here. Steam, Xbox, PlayStation. They're not bringing these people in to be able to improve their work. They're bringing them in to be able to monitor you, keep tabs on you, flag dissent, control perception. And in fact, we know that's the case because last year it was reported that Ubisoft was asking Steam to hide concurrent player data. This isn't risk mitigation, it's image management at the expense of reality. They're more invested in preserving the illusion of quality than actually achieving it. And if you've ever wondered why this industry feels so hollow right now, why it feels like no one in power is actually listening, this is why. If Ubisoft actually wanted to win players back, they'd be focused on quality, on listening to the overwhelming amount of feedback that they've been getting about how much people hate the way that they've designed their games and how they're paying full price for single-player games only to find them packed with microtransaction shops, battle pass mechanics, and pay-to-progress shortcuts. But instead, their financial report spends paragraphs trying to justify it. And I quote, "New methods of gaming and forms of monetization have emerged in recent years on PC and consoles. This is the case in particular with free-to-play and subscription models, which in parallel with the premium model, offer a possibility of reaching a wider and more diverse public and strengthening player engagement." Followed by the real punchline, the monetization offer within premium games makes the player experience more fun by allowing them to personalize their avatars and progress more quickly. However, this is always optional. Yes, microtransactions, famously fun. I love paying to skip parts of a game that I just paid $70 for. Players all over the world right now are begging for more economic friction in their escapist hobbies, right? Look, man, I get it. People do engage with microtransactions. I've done it. If I love a game, I'll support it, but that's not what's happening here. This isn't about rewarding great work. It's about forcing monetization into single-player games that were never designed for it. And when you do that, you break the very reason why people play those games. Just look at Assassin's Creed Shadows. Some of the coolest looking equipment, gear that's not just cosmetic, by the way, is locked behind a premium shop in a full-priced RPG. Why explore? Why hunt for secrets and search every single corner of the map if you know that the best stuff isn't in the world? It's in your wallet. And of course, it's not like it stops there. The entire base building mechanic in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which directly affects progression and power, is strangled behind resource collection limits. The most valuable resources, or the most amount of resources that you can capture, you have to call in supply runs, but those calls are limited and recharge over time. It's like a fucking mobile game. So what's their solution? Well, buy resource bundles with real money. That is intentional design. That is a system that is built around monetization in a premium game. It doesn't matter what game it is, if you want to sell microtransactions, the game has to create a need for it. That means limiting rewards, padding out progression, and turning achievement into frustration, and that always comes at the cost of enjoyment. These companies treat microtransactions like a silver bullet for profit, but they have a ceiling. They can only make sense in certain types of games, and single-player RPGs are not one of them. If anything, they poison the entire experience, and players aren't just opting out of these games, they're walking away consciously because they don't want to engage with any of this crap. crap, and subconsciously because they're not rewarded properly and the game just doesn't feel good to play anymore. I don't think that Ubisoft is ever going to come to terms with this, because in doing so, that would mean confronting a truth that they have spent years refusing to see. This is a company that does not want to be in touch with reality. I remember when I was speaking with former and current Ubisoft employees during one of my earlier investigations, some of them had survived the layoffs, but others hadn't. But one thing that they all pointed to was the exact same: a culture of toxic positivity. A QA specialist had told me that they were not allowed to directly tell somebody what they did wrong. They could only share solutions. You couldn't criticize. You couldn't identify the problem. You could only reframe failure as a soft, vague suggestion. And oh, by the way, make sure to put a smiley face at the end of your email. Otherwise, you might be in an HR meeting. At Ubisoft, ignorance is bliss. That mindset infects everything. You can see it now. You can see it plain as day, especially when Ubisoft now turns around and blames the current reputation of the Star Wars franchise for the underperformance of Star Wars Outlaws, as if that explains anything, as if people didn't love Rogue One, as if Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor weren't some of the best-selling Star Wars games of the last decade. Even Battlefront 2, the game that was once dragged for its monetization, has now found new life. Star Wars is fine. What isn't fine is them. The only thing holding any project back, game, show, or movie, is quality. It's whether the audience enjoys it, whether it's fairly priced, whether it respects the time and the attention of the people that showed up to support it. But instead of aiming for that, Ubisoft keeps chasing these top-down, politically correct visions of demographic reach, convincing themselves that if they just hit every checkbox and if they pack it full of microtransactions, that they'll just manufacture success. It's fucking delusion, and worse, it's disconnection. These executives are not living in the same world as the rest of us. Lack of accountability, suppressed feedback, deflection. These are the things that are killing Ubisoft right now, and they're going to keep killing Ubisoft until there's nothing left, until the last studio that they have is just quietly swallowed up by Tencent. Staying in tune with your audience, relating to them, understanding their needs, and evolving with them, these things are not optional. It is the bare minimum, and for whatever reason, Ubisoft feels like they are just immune to it. Crisis management for a video game company. Are you guys kidding me? Nowhere in the 400-page financial report, yes, I read the entire thing, unfortunately, not a single time did they bring up how feedback against their games was valid in any way, or that their games need to change in any significant way. It's just monitoring, watching, monetization strategies and trends. The only thing I saw related to quality was them saying that it seems that today players are more sensitive to quality. No shit, Sherlock. You guys are charging $70 for video games, $80 in some cases, and half the time they can't even run on a 4090. What do you expect? You guys are selling sailboats without a mast and handing players a paddle and saying figure it out. Sorry, selling players a paddle with diamonds for $29.99, completely optional. Microtransactions are fun. Fuck you. That's all I have to say. That level of delusion is only enjoyed by people that are so detached from reality that they cannot even comprehend what it is like to relate to just common people. Things are already so hard for people in the middle class and lower class right now. There's so much extra chip damage. Everything is so expensive. Do you think people really want this stuff in their single player games? What are you thinking? It's fun. If you guys thought that that was the worst of it, we're not even close to being done yet. Because after this financial report, Ubisoft ended up having a Q&A with their investors. And these guys came out swinging. I'm talking brutal, monstrous questions that these guys were just not ready for. And Ubisoft's CEO did not handle it well. Ubisoft has managed to place itself at the center of nearly every single industry controversy over the last half decade. Their stock price hasn't recovered, investor confidence is still shaky, and during this month's annual town hall, leadership was pressed hard about the company's future, their social ideologies used in Assassin's Creed Shadows, its performance, and more. Yves Guillemot, Ubisoft CEO, fielded questions directly in a live Q&A following a series of bold claims about the company's strategy, financials, and public perception. And wouldn't you know it, games journalists tried to cover for them and reframe the criticism. Lewis Packwood of GamesIndustry.biz summarized the questions in an article titled "Nothing is Written in Stone. Ubisoft Head Responds to Stop Killing Games Petition." They write, first they asked him about Assassin's Creed Shadows, which stars a real-life 16th century African samurai. The questioner asked, there's been a lot of controversy regarding that game, adding that Ubisoft has been accused and criticized for this wokeist trend. So woke or no woke, he continued. How do you explain Ubisoft's deteriorated reputation, which may actually challenge the foundations of your organization? Or are you going to backtrack or backpedal on this leftist political agenda? Is there room in the entertainment world for that kind of stance? Second, the questioner brought up Stop Killing Games, citing the crew specifically. He said, so do you support the petition? At the end of the day, when a player buys a Ubisoft game, do they own it? Or is there a chance that they may no longer be able to play that game years later? Guillemot responded to the first question by pointing out that Yasuke was someone who existed in real life and showcasing a character that has been extremely successful, and that is why we decided to tell that story. In regards to the second question, Guillemot noted Ubisoft provides information for how long a game can be played and that players are forewarned when a game is about to be discontinued. You provide a service, but nothing is written in stone. At some point, a service may be discontinued. Nothing is eternal, and we're doing our best to make sure that things go well for all players and buyers, because obviously support for all games can't last forever. But that's an issue that we're working on. That's something that the industry at large is working on to minimize impact on players. But clearly, that's something that you need to factor in. He continued by pointing out that software tools can become obsolete or unavailable over time. And that's why we release a new version. And so we have a second version, and then a version 3. But clearly, this is a far-reaching issue, and we're working on it. Yeah, see, what you're actually describing there is called planned obsolescence. It's a pipeline of continued revenue designed to devalue the product that you already bought and pressure you into buying the next one that they make. Only in the case of the games industry, their plan is just to take away what you bought to force you into the next. Now, I want to point something out so you guys can see how sometimes these games journalists will sidestep actual issues instead of reporting on what was actually said. Sometimes they will paraphrase, sanitize, and reframe until the core of the question completely disappears. The article claims that the question was about Ubisoft being criticized for a wokeist trend over starring a real-life 16th century African samurai, but that was not the question that was asked. What was actually asked was, there's been a lot of controversy around Assassin's Creed Shadows, which stars a 16th century black samurai, a bold choice for Ubisoft. He gets to fall in love with a transgender character, so woke or no woke? See how different that is? The article reduces it to a race-based question, stripping out the identity politics entirely, and in doing so, it pretends that the controversy is just about casting alone, when in reality, it's about the broader ideological choices and the growing tensions between creative direction and audience expectations. This is what the media does when they want to discredit criticism. They zoom in on a single dot and then mock the people that are pointing at it, conveniently ignoring that that dot is a part of a graph, one with a visible trend, a trajectory, and a pattern that people are reacting to. That is not journalism, that is editorial filtering. And Guillemot's response wasn't any better. They conveniently also left out how he fumbled through a tone-deaf justification, saying that when you get to play the game is full of characters, the characters actually blend in with the game. Then pivoted to, we wanted to showcase a hero's journey. Everybody wants to play a hero's journey. It's a powerful expectation. This isn't just about Ubisoft or manga series. This is someone who really existed, and showcasing that character has been extremely successful. None of this actually answers the question. It just avoids it, and that's the problem. When both the media and leadership refuse to engage honestly with criticism, when they pretend that it's not happening or they rewrite it to sound easier to dismiss, these studios never learn the right lessons. That's how you end up with games that alienate their audiences and underperform. The whole reason why players are complaining is specifically because these games are full of characters that don't blend in with the game. They stand out. They make a statement. That's what they're there to do, and it's obvious that that statement is one that is clearly not resonating with their core audiences that Ubisoft built these franchises for. It blows my mind that we still cannot have this conversation openly. Developers need to come to terms with the reality that the values that they want to express aren't always going to be shared by their audience. And when those ideas are handled with zero nuance, when the writing is shallow, when the characters are visual repellent, and everything else feels like it was designed to provoke rather than connect, it's going to backfire. These games don't showcase identity. They parade it around like it's a warning label. We're seeing this in other games too, with unattractive characters. It's as if they think that they can just make people like ugly by forcing it into every single game design. Guys, nobody wants to buy a lecture. I am here to buy a video game. I mean, Guillemot said it himself. They chose to showcase Yasuke because they saw he was already extremely successful. In other words, they saw him trending somewhere else. They saw him used somewhere else, and they decided to repurpose that image to serve their own narrative. They then layered on a romance subplot with a trans character, not because it actually served the story, but because it helped tick every single possible demographic box in a blind attempt to reach a wider audience. But all it does is just tokenize those identities by having it appear somewhere out of place. It flattens these complex social issues and realities into marketing beats. This is not representation. This is opportunism. And trying to spin that backlash as players being uncomfortable with a black protagonist is just insulting. It's so lazy. These games aren't being rejected because of who's in them. They're being rejected because they suck and people can see straight through the intent, because these stories feel hollow, these characters feel forced, and the audience that you're trying to pander to, this so-called virtuous crowd that you see on the internet you're trying to impress, they don't even show up to buy your games. I also had noticed how a lot of writers conveniently left out the very first question in the Q&A, a direct ask about the budget and sales performance of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Guillemot dodged it entirely, saying that Ubisoft doesn't disclose its sales or production costs, but in the same breath then admitted that they had over 5 million players and that it cost over 100 million euro to make, and it also required a very heavy investment into its engine. Seeing that most AAA games today, especially open world games, cost over $300 million to make, and even if we're being generous and pretending that the 5 million players actually means 5 million units sold, which we know it doesn't because it also has their subscription services in there, and even if we assume that every copy sold was sold for $70, which it hasn't because the game has already been on sale multiple times and is currently on sale for 25% off just 4 months after its release, you're still looking at a game that only made $350 million in gross revenue before Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation take their cuts. And let's be real, profitable, high-performing games don't get discounted this fast unless something went wrong, especially from a publisher in Ubisoft's financial condition. I make these videos because I want the industry to learn, because I'm hoping that somebody is actually listening, and I try to make sure that these criticisms and my points are laser focused so that they can't be taken out of context, even though they likely will regardless of whatever I say. But I want people to be heard. I want players to be heard. I want people's identities to be protected and respected and properly represented and not turned into fucking campaign talking points more than anything else. Just own up to your mistakes. Make a good game. You're making games for people, not for demographics. Then they go on to stop killing games. I love that line that they put in. You provide a service, but nothing is written in stone. At some point, a service may be discontinued. Nothing is eternal. We're trying to do our best for both players and buyers. That's crazy, man. All my N64 games and PS2 games, those were they services or products? Because they still work right now. Notice how they phrase it. Both players and buyers. Notice how we're already being separated into classes. You know, I just realized recently that the reason why these companies have been changing to reporting players instead of units sold, one side benefit is that they actually get to hide their performance, but the other part of it is to just erase the idea of ownership. It's slimy as hell, but that's exactly why they're doing it. Because he's calling games a service even when he's still talking about buyers, but you can't buy a service. You pay for a service. You subscribe to a service. Buying is the act of acquiring something. You don't acquire that because it's not yours. I didn't know that these executives could rewrite the laws of language to be able to suit their quarterly earnings call. I genuinely do not think that these corporations or a lot of these companies have just caught up to the modern era and how fast information travels, and they don't realize how easy it is for regular people to see through their bullshit. All the constant reframing, all the things that they take out of context, the corporate doublespeak, everything they use to be able to manipulate these narratives in their favor. It used to work, but it doesn't work anymore. And right now, all people want is humility and accountability. And they're getting neither of those. And the longer that continues to go on, the more of these companies are going to continue to suffer. And the more of these companies that are just going to go out of business entirely. And as you guys already know, I am here for it. Please keep doing what you're doing, because then that means that other companies, a lot of these indie publishers that actually understand what the needs of players are today, that are supporting some of the grassroots movements within this industry, some of the people that are actually going out and supporting Stop Killing Games publicly, those are the guys that are going to take over. And those are the people that I want running this industry. That's all I got. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, share it with your friends. Follow me on Twitch. Follow me on Twitter. I go live on Friday. Today is Friday. Or is it? Depending on where you watch it or when you watch it. Anyway, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Family, 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 family.
Go to Displate.com or follow the link in the description below and use my code LEGENDARY at checkout to get the best deal. Thank you to Displate for sponsoring this video.